All right, today I'm going to bring you a report again regarding the progress of the U.S.-Iranian deal. In fact, Stratford just came out with a report on it's entitled U.S.-Iran, a historic deal in the making. And of course, it goes on to talk about the various directions that could be taken, or whatever the case may be. But something you should know very quickly is that these negotiations have really gone from a private negotiation to a more public negotiation. And the agreements that have been made over the last few days were not agreements that were made over the last few days, but have been already agreed upon a while back. Well, the fact of the matter is that Iran and the United States are devising ways to implement what they have already agreed to. So don't think for a minute that they got together a couple days ago and all of a sudden came up with a breakthrough. That's not the way things work. And that won't be the way things will work when the Palestinians and the Israelis finally come down to an agreement as well. And yes, that day is coming as well, when they will come to an agreement. And as the Iranian U.S. agreement came down, it did not agree with Israel, and I have a hard time believing that the Palestinian-Israeli agreement will be in their favor as well. And this is what the article says regarding the U.S.-Iranian deal. It says on November 8th, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry said that a deal has not been reached and that some issues need to be resolved. Kerry was likely responding to rumors that the United States and Iran would soon reach a breakthrough in the talks. Such optimism is somewhat well-founded. Much of the information was leaked deliberately by the U.S. government. Still, Kerry's remarks were echoed earlier in the week by his Iranian counterpart, Javad Zarif, who said that a deal could be reached sometime this week. He admitted that negotiations had stalled somewhat, but noted that any potential delays would be overcome. These and other signs coming from the region strongly indicate that the two sides have indeed arrived at a tentative understanding. Now they must figure out how to implement it. The U.S. and Iranian governments both face heavy domestic resistance, and they feel a sense of urgency to show that the diplomacy is moving forward, albeit slowly. Now, here's an interesting part about the article. So the Obama administration has made it clear that it will not alter any part of the sanctions regime against Iran. Meanwhile, the Rouhani administration has made it clear that it will not permanently stop enriching uranium. Paradoxically, to appear victorious, Washington needs to show that it has prevented Tehran from pursuing nuclear weapons, and the Iranians need to show that they have convinced Washington to relent on its sanctions regime. So the question is, what would a bargain that satisfies both sides look like? For Iran to benefit from sanctions relief, Tehran needs Washington to do more than simply allow it to resume exports and recover funds owed for oil it already has exported. The money is important, but perhaps not as much as the symbolism of Iran's demand that assets be unfrozen. This would enable Rouhani to show his constituents that he changed the United States' attitude toward the Islamic Republic. Obama has the authority to repeal Executive Order 13622, which covers transactions between the National Iranian Oil Company and foreign financial institutions, and he can also unfreeze some assets without congressional approval. Ultimately, Rouhani needs to recover a few $1 billion to show that his policies are working and to gain greater leverage in taking the negotiations to the next level. In addition, Rouhani has to placate his country's elite military force, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, which has demanded that Obama promise not to seek regime change. Obama can meet these demands fairly easily, but not without something in return. Now getting to the part that probably most think that is the most important, that is uranium enrichment. And it says the Iranians are not prepared to halt uranium enrichment outright, but as an Iranian deputy foreign minister said November 8, Tehran is prepared to negotiate over the size, form, and dimensions of enrichment. What this means is that Iran is prepared to temporarily stop 20% enrichment, desist from installing further centrifuges, and open up some of its facilities for inspection. It is noteworthy that International Atomic Energy Agency Chief Yukiya Amano is scheduled to arrive in Tehran the week of November 10th, likely to discuss access and transparency issues with Ali Akbar Salehi, the head of Iran's Atomic Energy Organization. Notably, Iran has demanded assurances that its facilities would not be damaged during inspection and that the United States would protect Iran from any military reprisals by Israel. So that last part is something that may shock a lot of people, but Iran very well may put in their agreement that if they do cooperate and this agreement does go through, that the U.S. must be a protector of Iran in case Israel decides to do a preemptive strike on their nuclear facilities. Now, it should also be noted that this agreement, or the works that have already been dealt with in the agreement, are endorsed by the P5+1. So not only does it have U.S. approval, but it has world international approval as well. And don't think for a minute that this is going to be a deal that's going to be worked out in a couple of weeks. This is something that is going to be dealt with over the long term and will be done in stages, just like as stated regarding the Palestinian-Israeli situation. That will also be dealt with in stages. And you know, that's the reason why it says in the Bible that it will be a 7-year peace pact. I believe that the 7 years that is indicated in Daniel 9:27 is the 7 years that it will take in order for land to be turned over to the Palestinians. Land swaps will be dealt with, and that the last jewel of the crown of this agreement will be that Israel will have to split Jerusalem down the middle, or at least comparable to what both will agree to. And the article closes with this right here. It says, it is unclear whether the final touches will take hours or days. And I'm talking about the Iranian-U.S. agreement. Either way, some kind of agreement will be reached. The agreement will shape further negotiations, which in turn will affect the geopolitics of the world's most volatile region. And that's something you might want to take into consideration as well, that if these negotiations show a positive step forward, this very well may be the formula that we'll be taking with the Israeli Palestinians, with the Syrians and the rebels, and with other flare-ups that might take place throughout. And I also received an article from the Times of Israel from a reporter of mine, and it basically starts out by saying the heading is Crisis of Faith Between Israel and U.S. Over Possible Iran Deal. Netanyahu, in a state of shock over terms, believes agreement would enable Iran to become nuclear breakout state, TV reports say, and that deal between, or I should say seen as putting an end to an Israeli military option. And the reality is that's probably true. I mean, if one of the main staples of this agreement is for the United States to prevent a U.S. Preemptive strike against Iran, then it most likely does put an end to any notion that Israel will be able to strike against Iran's nuclear facilities. But I have a feeling that's probably going to go both ways, meaning that in the Palestinian-Israeli negotiations, Israel is going to ask for some type of security package that will also enable them to have security along the West Bank borders, and to have protection against the means of Iran or whoever may confront them. So it's likely when when Israel and Palestinians finally do come to their conclusion, that Israel will also ask that for protection of some type of security, that they will not be able to attack Israel with their nuclear weapons, if in fact that does become a problem, which we'll see. It could very well happen. But I have a sneaking suspicion that the United States already knows that Iran has crossed the red line, and they may be working towards some type of agreement, as they did with I should say the U.S. did with Pakistan, where the U.S. does have some control, how much I don't know, but does have some control over their nuclear weapons. And speaking of the story that broke from the BBC that I brought to you guys, I think it was yesterday or the day before, about Saudi Arabia obtaining nuclear weapons from Pakistan. Well, that story is now being challenged by some of the analysts, military analysts that are out there, and the vast majority of them, or should I say the vast majority of good sources, are saying that that's likely improbable, but not totally out of the question. But most analysts agree that even if Pakistan were to give Saudi Arabia a complete package, this system still needs to be deployed and tested. That's like giving a country who has never worked with jets or combat airplanes an F-35 and saying, okay, have at it, go ahead and start using these F-35. They simply wouldn't know what to do with it. There is a huge learning curve, and not only that, a lot of technical expertise that Saudi Arabia simply doesn't have in order to run a viable nuclear threat to Iran. As I said, first it would have to be tested, and any test that Saudi Arabia would, or I should say Pakistan would do on Saudi Arabian soil would be easily detectable. And if detected, that would put Pakistan in the middle of a monstrous international political fallout. And if you remember back in 2004, the father of their nuclear weapons program, Mr. Khan, was accused of spreading a nuclear technology to North Korea and undesirable nations. So the fallout that this deal would create simply is not worth the money that Saudi Arabia definitely has to give. But I simply, most analysts don't see Pakistan entering into a deal of this nature, because it would only bring back the memories of what happened back in 2004. So in essence, this announcement has really been nothing more than a publicity stunt in order to put pressure on the United States to keep the finger on Iran and not let up and allow them to ease sanctions and to stop Iran from what they believe is their march toward a nuclear bomb. So frankly, I wouldn't count on Iran, or I should say Saudi Arabia, obtaining nuclear weapons. What I think is really going to happen is I think that the P5 plus the United States are going to come together and create a Middle East security umbrella that is going to bring protection to everyone involved, including Saudi Arabia, Jordan, all of Israel's neighbors, including Israel, and at the same time will also protect Iran from Israel. And when it all comes down to the end, that will be we will create a Palestinian state alongside of Israel, and this grand deal will include this big security package that these individuals will come together and create. And this will likely be the sketch of what the agreement that the Antichrist will bring when it comes time. But of course, the rapture of the church is going to take place first. And you know what? You could die before that happens. 150,000 people will die today, and all of them will have died with their sins paid for, but the vast majority of them will have rejected that free gift of salvation that only can come through Jesus. And I pray today that if you have not accepted the Lord as Savior, that today will be the day that you will make that decision. Well, this is Terry Malone with the Calvary Prophecy Report.